Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pennington County Planning Commission meeting of October 23rd, 2023. Recommendations to the Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on November 7, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. And I tried to tell the folks in the audience, 10:30 means that's when the planning items start. They can run for any number of amount of time with the Board of Commissioners while they finish them all. The Planning Commission utilizes speaker request forms, which are available in the commission chambers during the meeting right at the back of the room. Roll call. We've got everyone here today. Approval of the minutes of the October 10th, 2023 meeting of the Planning Commission. Have you all had a chance to review those minutes in your agenda packet? And if you have, the chair would address the motion.
Move we approve the minutes of the October 10th meeting.
Second.
Moved and second for approval of the October 10th, 2023 minutes of the Pennington County Planning Commission. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to the approval of the agenda. And the same request is there. Did you all have an opportunity to review the agenda in your planning packet? And if so, the chair will address a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted for the October 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Pennington County Planning Commission. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to the consent. Good morning, Jason.
Morning, Commissioners. Jason Thennison, Assistant Planning Director. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make the final decision. Agenda item number 3 is conditional use permit 18-12 for Edelweiss Mountain Lodging. Agent is Marshall McKaylee. To review a vacation home rental on the subject property in a suburban residential district, and staff recommends approval of the review of conditional use permit 18-12 with conditions. Agenda item number 4 is conditional use permit review 20-18 for Wild Spring Solar LLC to reveal a utility scale solar energy system. And staff recommends approval of the review of conditional use permit 20-18 with conditions. Agenda item number 5 is conditional use permit review CU 21-60 for Jeff Slather to review a home occupation, a consulting and catering service in an existing structure on the subject property. Staff recommends approval of the review of conditional use permit 21-60 with conditions. And lastly, agenda item number 6 is major planned unit development amendment review PU 16-03 for Dan and Nancy Evangelisto, Century Home Crafters LLC, Century Land Holdings LLC, and Summer Creek Inn LLC to review an existing planned unit development to allow a specialty resort development to include the uses such as vacation home rentals, weddings, receptions, picnics, family reunions, single-family residences, bed and breakfast, storage, gift shop, spa, cabana, bistro, detached accessory structure, living quarters, duplex, etc. on the subject properties. And staff does recommend approval of the review of major planned unit development amendment PU 16-03 with conditions.
Thank you, Jason. Does the staff desire to have any item pulled from this?
Number 3.
Number 3. Planning Commission, desire to have any item pulled from the consent agenda? Anyone in the audience desire to have an item pulled? By the consent agenda, we pass these items that are remaining, in this case, with the exception of number 3, by a vote that deals with an action for all of them. Chair will address a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda, item number 3.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the Pennington County October 23rd consent agenda with item number 3 removed, making 4, 5, and 6 the items in the vote. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 3.
Good morning, Commissioners. Christine Phillip, Assistant Planner. Agenda item number 3, Idlewild Mountain Lodging Incorporated. There was a couple of typing errors, conditional use permit. Let's see. Under recommendations, condition went from 13 to 15, so I had to add number 14. You can see there was a jump in there. And then I also had to update number C on the analysis to reflect these changes.
14, and would you do?
So it went 13, 15, 16.
Oh, all right. Any questions for Christine? Chair to address a motion for those changes recommended by the staff.
I move we approve CU 18-12 with the changes as recommended by staff.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item number 3, which is a conditional use permit 18-12 with 16 conditions, 13, 14, and 15, and 16 with a slight revision there to put it in order. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 7. Christine, we get to see you again already quick, huh?
Christine Phillip, Assistant Planner, Agenda Item Number 7, Special Consideration to Trailwood Village Planned Unit Development. Applicant owners are Brian and Tamara Horst. The location is 3025 Preston Place. They live on .23 acres. The current zoning is planned unit development. They have no flood hazard. A special consideration to PUD 7902 is continued from the October 10th, 2023 Pennington County Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission requested a continuation to allow the applicants to come back for discussion on options for the house addition. On October 16th, a new site plan was submitted to staff by the applicant. Staff recommends denial of special consideration to Trailwood Village Planned Unit Development PU 2311, as there are no special conditions on the property that would excuse literal enforcement of the Pennington County Planning Zoning Ordinance. However, if the Board of Adjustment, if the Planning Commission disagrees and approves this request, staff recommends the conditions to be included, and the applicants are here if you have any questions for them.
Questions for Christine? All right. Is anyone here? The applicant is here.
Yep.
All right. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Homeowner? Can you pull up the one that we did did a few things in the meantime. I got a site survey done to show the exact property lines and where I'd encroach, and then I had the house surveyed on it to show how I'd encroach. Even if I was to turn the addition, it'd still be encroaching on the county property if I was to turn it. And I didn't want to turn it because of the layout of the house. If you got it up there, Chris.
No, I didn't add. Hold on one second, I'll find it. So I did add the new site plan to the packet, but the applicant brought something in this morning also.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think I haven't found that site plan, but I think that's why we continued this, was to see what, if it was possible to go sideways or
Correct.
continue on. We wanted some description on why you wanted
Yes, sir.
to continue with the length part with the setback on the backside.
Yes.
And I think that's, if I remember correctly, that's what the commission was requesting some more information on, and your thoughts of why you should think to continue through the back and the side is requiring the same type of setback, or is it the function of the house?
I'd still need to do a setback even if I turned it, and I'd probably abort the mission because I couldn't put my second bathroom in because I want to tap into the same wall that my existing bathroom, excuse me, is in, which is right there. So I could tap into my plumbing, and then she could get her pantry out there. That's up in the other area up there. Yep, oh, sorry.
Just to jump in here while you're doing that, I think the site plan the applicant's referring to that we didn't have before is the one by Avid 4
Yes, sir.
in your agenda book. It's under Avid 4 site plan. I believe it's about the third or fourth page that Christine put in there. It's more than that seventh page. If you wanted to see the new site plan or revised.
And there was some other questions on that as far as flooding. It'll be built on stilts, so it'll just be a concrete slab underneath it. I have a fire hydrant right in my front yard for fire. Those were a couple other things that were, and the roof, the peaks of the roof, if I did turn it, I'd have the peaks running parallel, which would kind of be a little bit unusual, I think. You guys see what you think, but I want my roof lines to run, intersect instead of running together and having that big valley.
Questions for Mr. Horst?
Mr. Chair, so all of these site plans are as the original request was made, correct?
Pardon me, sir?
All the site plans here are as the original request was made.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
well, I appreciate the applicant coming in today, because I think you weren't here at the last one, and to give us some of the information on forward. I do agree. I think, you do have the water mains and so forth on the other side where we were looking at. I think it's less intrusive on the back side than on the side. But that's my thoughts on this, if we're going to have a variance either way. And if I do remember correctly, you had discussion with your neighbors too, didn't you?
Yes, I did, sir.
And they approved it too, so it's,
Yes.
I agree with the commission. It appears that 30-foot would be within the platted water easement, which is a serious matter. You're not going to build over the top of a water easement because it's going to be on your dollar if any problems come up, and nobody is going to do that. I understand why you avoided that. That's something that has added a lot to my thinking.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant while he's here? Then I guess the floor is open to discussion before we get to a motion. It appears the closest per your new survey is 9.7 feet.
Yes, sir.
And you're on a 25 setback on that side?
Yes.
How far is it across that drainage way? Just over the top of your thumb, I won't hold you to it. I mean, is it 40 feet, 50 feet?
You're
100?
saying the width of the
Yeah.
ditch?
To over to your next,
Probably 50 feet, I'd say.
all right.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell from the overhead picture. It looks fairly wide.
Yeah.
In the overhead. But certainly some of it is for drainage anyway.
Mr. Chair, you can see on this exhibit the plat layout of the distance between the next lot. to
Is it
that.
on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't give you footage, but you can see roughly where the next one, the big drainage ditch goes through there.
Thank you for that. I'll find that. I didn't note that previously. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm still not crazy about cutting setbacks down that much, but I will leave it to the decision of the board or the commission as where we go from here.
We need to move along. How about a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve the request with the 6 conditions staff has it added.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve with the 6 conditions that staff's recommending. In the case of our approval of this request, is that the way to phrase it for you, Christine? They did discuss this apparently in staff, and that would be for special consideration to a planned unit development 23-11, 6 conditions, but to signify approval of it. Discussion,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I agree with Karen. I think there's, we'd asked for some alternate solutions. We got the same thing back. Does show a little bigger setback than the 8-foot that was originally proposed. Still quite a ways from 25 feet to 9 feet. I understand the roof tie-in and plumbing wall. As a builder, I can see how that can still be accomplished by turning the unit during the addition. I still feel like this is just a personal preference and not trying to abide by the rules as much as they can. So I'm probably going to be in opposition of this, just for those reasons.
Mike?
Mr. Chair, originally, my first thought on this is the one we had a couple of meetings ago, the same thing. You do it once, what do you do in the future? I have nothing against what the gentleman is trying to do, but I have to agree with Karen on this one, I'm afraid.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think I've gone along with several of the commissioners on this, and I want to be consistent. So I cannot see my way clear to support this motion. I think we need to subscribe to good practices, and there's not a compelling reason or a compelling concession that would make me comfortable with this.
Mr.
Anyone
Chair,
from the audience that would like to involve themselves in the discussion on this matter? Applicant?
I'm not here to argue with you guys. I'm just trying to
Okay.
improve my neighborhood.
All right,
Put some
thank
money
you.
into the
Mr.
neighborhood.
Chair, I will support the approval of this. If there was another lot adjacent to it, then that's why your 25-foot setback is there. There's a drainage ditch that is surrounded by trees that you can't even see. That's the purpose of a setback, not just because we say that there's 25 feet. There's that again, and, their setback actually from the other property is probably 70 feet. So I will be supporting moving ahead with this.
And any other discussion?
Christine, will this go to the commissioners?
Don't believe so.
So no.
So it ends with us.
I think he's correct in that. I don't believe it goes forward.
It will not go forward to special consideration to the planned unit development.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
my comments on this is I think the applicant did what was requested, and I see, I'd hate to have it go the other way for that direction because of the water main, the utility easement. It leaves plenty of room back there, and I agree with Kevin that, the drainage area back there is further back than what's stated, but also on the other part of it is that he did take the extra step and contact his neighbors for the information, so looks like we have. That's
Okay.
my final comment, but it looks like there's somebody out there.
Yes. You have to come up and introduce yourself just for the record.
My name is Riley Cassidy, and I live directly next door. And I would actually invite you guys out to survey that, because I agree with you guys over here. I think if you guys put a site inspection on it, you would understand that that distance is almost irrelevant. I understand codes. I get that. I support that 1,000%. I love the fact that you guys are trying to be consistent with rules and regulations. In my opinion, I lived next door to them, for 10 years, and it's in reality abandoned property, that easement. And I think if you guys actually physically came out and laid eyes on it and saw it versus a plan, I think would be very beneficial for you.
Questions for Riley? Thank you, Riley.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not really.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Better have a roll call.
Roll call. Charlie?
I'm going to support the motion to approve.
Jim?
No.
Karen?
No.
Kevin?
No.
Mike?
No.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Kevin?
4-3. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Rush. On to item number 8. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning. Megan Talmadge, planner. Agenda item number 8 is conditional use permit CU 23-33, and it is to allow multifamily modular home on the subject property. The owner is Wolfpack Holdings LLC, Dennis Casey. Their agent is Toby Design Group. This item last came up in the October 10th meeting. The commissioners had questions regarding the fire suppression requirements of the city. And for that, while I did contact the city of Rapid City in regards to that, Chip Primus is actually here today to talk about those fire suppression requirements.
Please introduce yourself just for the record. Thank
Good
you.
morning, Commissioners. Chip Primus, Rapid City Fire and Life Safety Division Chief. And we're here to talk about, if you give me a little leniency, a little history, how these covenants work and how the requirements that we do with this joint jurisdictional areas. The, the property, the fire code requires, fire flow for an area that's being developed. And in some jurisdictions, they allow, because there's no infrastructure in the ground, they don't require it. But what we've been doing and had good luck using the fire sprinkler or the wildland urban interface codes to promote development in areas. So what we've done, and throughout the city, the 40-unit rule, areas where you can only have one driveway going in, it's a tool we've used with developers and home builders to be able to develop areas where people can live. Otherwise, those areas would be undevelopable. And what we've done with this gentleman is it was either per state law, I can't, and we can as governing boards require somebody to put sprinkler systems in their residence. That's an administrative rule. And what we've done with our covenant agreements is we've given them choices. They could put in a well or a holding tank that would supply enough water for fire flow, or they choose to add residential fire sprinklers to their homes. And this has been going on many years, and it's been one individual took us to task on going to court and with the state administrative rule, and that person lost. We were doing it for a covenant agreement, and we could choose to support a building in this area, or we would just choose to deny it all out. Well, that's not good for anybody. We want to work with everybody to try to make things work. For this property here, he has residential sprinklers already installed. These are modular homes. It was a duplex built by Superior Homes, and it was used at the Indian Health Hospital. They're using it for some office space. Well, he was able to get these buildings, and their buildings are already protected. There are, just trying to answer some questions because I did watch your last commissioners meeting. There are different types of sprinkler systems, and this is a 13D, which is for residential 1 and 2 family homes. The well on site, how we go about it is as soon as we see somebody going after and wanting to build, and they're going to do this, they choose to do the sprinkler system, we work with them right away with the well. First of all, with the pump size in the well, and then also the line going to the residence. So we don't have too small a pump, or we don't have or too small a line, which creates friction loss, and then not enough pressure or gallons per minute is in the house, so the sprinkler system wouldn't work. So we work with the homeowner on this because they work with a sprinkler company to help them calculate all this. In some areas, we've come across and worked well with the sprinkler companies due to the geographical elevation from where the well is to where the residence built. The well just doesn't work. So we've done a dual pump system where they put a 300-gallon tank with a pump in the house, and that's used for domestic use, which ensures they have great water pressure in their house, but it also ensures that the sprinkler system's going to work. So that's how that works. And like I was talking about before, some jurisdictions, they ignore the fire flow because it's too expensive. But we don't ignore the fire flow requirements, and we use it as a tool and to promote safety. And what this leads into is, Rapid City and the surrounding in the county, we've seen tremendous amount of growth, which pushes people out into the urban interface areas. We're currently redoing the emergency plan response plan for the county, with the county, joint jurisdiction for all the fire departments around, to look at these wildland urban interface areas. And there's great tools out there. And, you know, part of this, where I'm leading into is with this area, there wasn't a lot of trees and there wasn't a lot of things. Well, what we do there was a lot of trees and it was overgrown, we would have incorporated a thinning program, maintenance. So basically, like in the city of Watertown, or Rapid City, I came from Watertown, sorry. Rapid City, we have a crew that wildland urban interface. And we go through, and it's not a hack job of going in and just cutting all the trees down, but we go through and we thin out the trees, the underbrush. And where I'm leading to is we've had tremendous amount of luck with that. There's areas where we've had fires come through and all that area was treated. And what that treatment does is it slows the force of the fire down. It slows the fire down because we took away the fuels. So it's like taking the tracks out from a steam or a train, and it slows the fires down where we can actually have a chance of suppressing it or saving neighborhoods. It doesn't always work, as we've seen across the country, but we have where I'm going to is we have great relations with the Bureau of Land Management. They have grant funding available to help people do thinning of their property. Through the state, we have a great relationship with the state, Bureau of Land Management, and the federal. And what we're all trying to do as a group is increase the amount of property that's been treated. And we use this as a tool to educate people of, hey, this is what you can do around your property to help it if a wildfire would start. So with that, like in the county, that's a tool that you guys could use when people are asking for some stipulations or, what exceptions. I mean, you could require, so, we were going to require some fuel mitigation of your property. So it's just a tool. And do you have any questions for me? I'm kind of rambling all over.
Okay, questions for Chip?
Mr.
Go right ahead, Kevin.
I'm not an expert at all on 13D, but the flow requirements are not huge on a residential.
No.
What do they have, like 2 heads that they have to feed?
2 heads, and according to NFPA, there's an average. There's different types of heads, different sizes, and we're talking about sprinkler heads, and the orifice is different size, covers different, requires different flows. Well, on the average, a residential sprinkler head is 7 psi minimum, and to flow 13 gallons a minute. So, and that's where the sprinkler company comes in and designs a system for the homeowner to ensure that's going to work and function, starting from the water supply into the house. And what we found by doing this too, the homeowners were appreciative because they had really some good water pressure in their house for domestic use. So.
Quick question. Do insurance companies take this into consideration?
Unfortunately, the insurance companies haven't been on board with this. The only time you get a discount is if you have an alarm system hooked to it, or they're more of a fire alarm that's monitored by a third party.
My thinking it like where we are in Hill City with hail, if we have better shingles, we get better rates. And I would think they would look at something like this and say, you do this, you get a better rate.
Well, and what we've seen happen in California and some other areas, insurance companies aren't insuring these wildland urban interface areas anymore.
Yeah.
So we've been proactive, the board and the city, planning and the fire departments, Jerome, being ahead of all this stuff for years. We're known across the country of all the work that we do, working together with this wildland urban interface stuff and the thinning crew. Bureau of Land Management, their entire board came out to see what we were doing. And, you know, this is a very important thing. I think we start having some discussions about it with the commission and everybody in the county to educate them on what we can do in case of a wildfire.
Additional questions for Chip? I've got a couple. I understood, in other words, the sprinkler systems are based on a domestic spec, which is going to have some different size equipment in there, and I understand that. And so I don't have any question about that. What about fire hydrants here?
That's part of the, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Sorry, Chairman.
Are you going to come off the city line, or are you coming off of wells? What are you going to do with fire hydrants?
No, so what we're doing, the fire hydrant part of this is, in the rural areas, it's infeasible for anybody to put a fire hydrant in. You know, they could choose to put a 60,000 gallon tank in the ground or somewhere to use, that would meet fire flow. And that's unrealistic too. So we give them an option to choose between doing a 60,000 gallon tank or 30,000 or whatever to, you know, then they choose a sprinkler house, which in turn saves lives, it's proven, and saves, in the wildland urban interface area, a structure fire from starting the forest on fire and burning millions of acres in towns and things like that.
The only reason I brought it up is because the city, of course, is supplying water to the airport, so there is a city water line out there. And I'm sure you're going to run into that one again.
Well, yeah.
So, and then I understand your mitigation program, and in this case, I don't think the property really needs much mitigation, I would agree with you. Now, my final question is the one where we started out. Is all of this, you think, going to make Rapid City happy and meet their guidelines?
Yeah, actually, those were my stipulations that you were reading. And bad to myself and Megan for communication, if I would have put the stipulations as how we write them in a covenant agreement, it explains it all the way out, and we can provide copies with that. But
They've given you some indication that if you draft your covenants in the order of what you've presented here, that they're receptive to them.
There's no problem.
Okay.
That
was my biggest question from day one on this thing.
Yeah, and
what you're going to get Rapid City to go along with versus what you think.
And I'm going to leave my card for all you guys. You can email me, call me. I know you have a full-time job or other things and what you're doing, and even if it's at night, I want you to give me a call when things come up, and I'll be here to help answer things and support you guys when you have tough decisions to make.
Thank you, Chip. That's the end of my questions. Anyone else have any additional? Chair, accept a motion in the matter.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
move to approve conditional use permit CU 23-33.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve conditional use permit 23-33 per staff's recommendation with, and I didn't write down how many conditions there was, 9 conditions. Discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm not going to support the motion on the floor because I believe, after reading through Patrick Dame's report and having some other discussions with how zoning is out on the airport, you know, he suggested that be commercial. And if you look at it across the streets, commercial, the backside of it, and even where it's ag across the airport road where they have, they're operating storage units and car rent or car storage.
Right.
That's my reasoning behind it. So that's just my comments on that's.
Lloyd, could I ask, in other words, you're saying the other ones didn't have to do this, or you're worried that they will in the future?
I'm just responding to Patrick's email on the zoning.
Okay,
That's not part of that right now, but, I know the airport board is concerned with a lot of stuff that happens out, and they do have a requirement in here that if they're gonna make it into, multifamily, that they sign the waiver. I think that's in the requirements also, but I'm just trying to think of 20, 30 years out from now. As you said, they're doing a new lagoon and water and that type of stuff. The zoning worries me.
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I agree with Lloyd. I'm a little unsettled by this notion that, our responsibility to plan, and planning is for the future. It's just like the last item we dealt with. There may not be a problem now, but we need to make sensible choices for the future, as far as we know. And I just think this is an odd sort of arrangement. And it seems to me inappropriate for the area and so forth. So I'm going to have a difficult time voting for this, I think.
all right. Additional discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The reason I moved to approve this is they went through the process of figuring out how to put their property there. They have it sprinkled. They've met the requirements that they've reached out to. I've been around many an airport where there's a lot of residential zones around those airports. I think it's future growth of where Rapid City's going. We're limited in a lot of our property surrounding the city. So it's going to grow, in all of our areas around town. The airport's just one of them. So I don't have a lot of grief in this. It puts a lot of the responsibility on the homeowner. They're responsible for their home insurance for their property. They have to sign the waivers. They know there's an airport there. They have to live with the airport. All of that has been pointed out in this. So that's why I'm moving to approve it. A lot of it is on the homeowner, and they've met the requirements that are required in order to have that residential structure there.
Thank you, Kevin. I guess I'm going to weigh in too. I guess I feel more comfortable with this with multifamily. It looks to me like it's either going to end up commercial or multifamily, that corner, one or the other. And we've had our difficulties on what will allow. At one time, in fact, the car auction got there. At that time, it had to be industrial or something. I remember wouldn't allow a commercial venture like the car auction, and we opposed Rapid City on that years ago. So I guess in this case, where Rapid City has reviewed this, the only question I have is why the water's running right by it. Why they don't start planning and start hooking onto it, and let's get it done with and get the road straightened out in the same time. But we are not being asked to do that. So that was why I ventured in on that. So thank you. Any other discussion from the audience? From the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you get that?
Yes,
Our
thank you.
opposed were very good so that you could record them both. I don't think we need a vote on that. So it was a 5-2.
Yes.
Thank you. On to item number 9. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move that we reconsider item number 7. It's been brought to my attention, there's a rule of order that has, perhaps we stated that incorrectly.
All right. Is there a second to that request? To reconsider?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reconsider item number 7. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. You have the floor.
Well, I'm going to let this young lady
Okay.
explain exactly
Good.
the rationale for this. 'Cause
Thank you. Alexa Mueller, Pennington County State's Attorney's Office. It came to my attention that the motion on the floor was to approve the item, and it failed 4-3. That left no motion on the table. That left no action on the table. So at this point, if that's the way that the commission is leaning, the recommendation would be a motion to deny and take a vote on that so that there's no more.
Per staff's recommendation.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I'll challenge you that. At the South Dakota State Convention, that one of the recommendations to us how to run a meeting is you make approval of a motion at the meeting. And I tried it, it didn't work for our commission. And if it failed, then it failed. You know, if it was approved, if your motion was to approve and you voted, didn't get the votes, then it failed. But what you're saying, since the approval didn't pass, you need to do a substitute motion for denial or?
Can I weigh in here before?
Yeah.
She's saying that left no action on the table.
The motion
And that
failed.
is possible in this case, in this
Oh, for the
particular
whole-
case. There was no action taken on the table. And an action's necessary on a, well, it would be most, I'm thinking conditional use permit, really specifically. But in the case for a special consideration, it takes some action.
So it takes a positive, we need to
Right.
vote on a,
Correct.
What she's
on a
saying.
positive
So
motion.
rather than leave that
Deny
door
or
open,
accept
she
it, yeah.
advised me that we may want to go back and reconsider, and it takes one of the votes
Yeah.
that supported the measure, and second was also supported the measure, so we're in good stead as far as Robert's rules right now. But it might be wise just to do it so that we don't get questioned.
So we need a motion to move to deny item
Per staff's recommendation.
per staff's recommendation
Correct.
number 7.
Yes, and that is, Mr. Chair, just to make sure that. the
No
record is-
discussion. Second, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, go ahead. Thank you.
That's just to make sure that the record is clean. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Okay.
All she was advising, it would not be wise to leave it without action on the
Without an
table.
action.
And I understood that, and I think rather than leave it to open the question down the road, we just as well do it.
Okay. No, I agree. I was just,
Yeah.
part of the workshop that we had, they try to get a motion on the floor all the time, and whether it's, you know, if you vote no, it's a denial.
Yeah,
So,
right, yeah.
But I get what you're saying, so.
All right, and just for the audience, so that those folks that are listening to us, as well as those sitting here, to reconsider, you must do it at the same meeting or at the very next meeting only, and we followed those rules, and we are under Robert's rules, so we are to the motion. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So just for the record, it has been denied per staff's recommendation. Special consideration PU 23-11. Thank you. On to, it's item number 9 now, aren't we?
Cody Stack, environmental planner. Item 9 is conditional use permit CU 23-34. It's to allow an accessory dwelling unit on the subject property. The applicant and landowner is Catherine and Benjamin Lee. Location is 22535 Aspen Drive. Current zoning is rural residential district with an existing land use of residential. Access is off Aspen Drive, and there's no special flood hazard area on the property. The zoning ordinance lists 7 criteria that the planning commission may consider in the review of the conditional use permit applications. Those are on the screen on your left. It appears that the request meets all of these criteria. Also, Pennington County zoning ordinance section 324 lists criteria that an ADU must follow. That is on your right. It appears that the structure that they are proposing meets all of those requirements. Currently on the property, there is a single-family residence that was built in 1989 and a detached garage and a shop building built in 1987. There are 2 structures, a 10 by 21 tool shed and a 16 by 28 loafing shed that were built without building permits. Also, prior to the obtaining a building permit for the ADU, the applicants will have to get a building permit for those and pay any penalty fees. This was right around for interdepartment review. The only concerns was from addressing. and basically saying that the ADU needed a separate address. The applicants are proposing a 20 by 24 accessory dwelling unit. They are proposing to connect the ADU to the existing septic system. The applicants may need to upgrade the septic system to accommodate the ADU. This is handled prior to the building permit, and they wouldn't be able to get their building permit if their septic's not sized properly. Staff did receive a call from a neighboring property owner who stated the applicants have started building the ADU and that the homeowners association does not allow a second residence. However, Pennington County allows ADUs with an approved conditional use permit. Pennington County does not enforce any HOA covenants. The HOA would need to enforce their covenants civilly, as any violation would be between the HOA and the landowners. On October 18th, 2023, staff performed a site visit and found that the proposed ADU is currently being constructed, so the applicants will need to pay a penalty fee for that. With that, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 23-34 with conditions.
Thank you, Cody. Questions for Cody? We have a number of speaker requests on this. Is your applicant here on this, Cody? All right. I was going to advise that we would hear the applicant after the request. I have a Henry Colbrand. Henry, we've got to have you introduce yourself just for the record when you get up here. That goes for everyone. There's actually people listening to this that may not see it, so.
Well, that's fine. Good morning. My name is Henry Colbrand. I live at 22527 Aspen, which is a couple houses down from this property. And I guess I have a few comments to make, and I have some additional questions that I may be able to address with Cody at some later time. We were informed about this basically last Wednesday. So although we saw construction going on in that property, we didn't realize that this was going to be an accessory dwelling unit with all of the attendant activities associated with that. My concern on this is that although you're not here to enforce our covenants for the homeowners association, the fact is that the homeowners association has been in place since 1978. It has guided the development of all of this property and created a certain character, I guess, of single family, single dwelling units within the subdivision. This particular approval of this particular additional unit, we believe would kind of change the character of the subdivision and potentially create other issues down the line should other people decide, hey, this is a good idea, let us do this. Let's put up an ADU and rent it out and, have additional traffic and things that the private road system is probably not prepared to deal with. So I guess my comment to you is, although the covenants don't necessarily play in an enforcement issue or something like that from your point of view, taking them into account in terms of how they've shaped the development of the property, under criteria reviewed, criteria number 2 basically says, will this in any manner substantially impair or diminish the uses, values, and enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood? My contention is that it would change the characteristic of the subdivision and therefore begin a process that might cause other of these sorts of things to be built and fundamentally change the characteristic of the land. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but that's my comment. Yes,
I have
sir.
a question. Is the HOA in a position to do something legally on this?
I can't answer that question. I'm no longer involved with the management of the HOA, but the HOA does have representatives here from the board. They can probably answer that better.
It would seem to me the HOA is the way to go in enforcing this, because as far as the county goes, we have nothing to do with that part of it. But now maybe she has some.
Well, I guess again, the comment is, will this detrimentally affect the other people living close by? my contention is that it potentially will. So that's, that's my only comment to that. And I realize that you're not here to enforce covenants and whether or not, a fence is built in the right place and all that. That's something the HOA does. But this is a bigger issue because it basically opens the door if we do this. And that's the concern. So, any other questions?
Any other questions for Henry?
And,
Go ahead.
this is really all about change. You mentioned that, you used that word. And I think what we need to be alert to is that there's going to be change in any community. And there will be disagreement as to the extent of that change. But if the landowner were to suddenly say that he wanted to quadruple the size of his house, and relatives from afar move in and the population suddenly quadruples, that would be a dramatic change. But it would be a change that probably would be within the limits of your
Yes.
HOA. The consequences, however, might not be as good as what it was before. And indeed, this change might be very modest. You would feel or experience little or nothing. And I'm always frustrated by people who are opposed to change. I mean, it's like, if there's any change, it must be bad. And I think our experience is that oftentimes it's good. And we also don't want to end up restricting people's capacity to grow or allow their property to grow with their interest and needs. So that's why we always hesitate a little bit when people come and I think we sometimes see more darkness in change than there needs to be. And that's what I would alert you to, is that I know there's going to be change, but this to me doesn't seem very catastrophic by any means. If I lived in your neighborhood, I can't imagine I wouldn't support this. But everyone has their own, and you certainly have a right to bring this, but I just want to alert you to that, is that it's,
And I appreciate that perspective. I think, most of us have to deal with lots of different change.
Right,
Rapid
yes,
City
yes.
has really changed a lot just in the last few years, so there's no question that the change is ongoing. We may have made a substantial investment in our property, and it was done on the basis of basically the background of these covenants. Having seen that, if we were to walk in, one of the reasons we bought that property was because we felt we had a sense of what it would look like in 20 years versus some of the other lots we looked at that didn't have any similar restrictions. So that would be my comment back is that, if we were just walking into this, is one ADU gonna ruin the neighborhood?
Right.
No, but one ADU sets the precedent for 2 or 3 or whoever knows how many. And the ADUs once built, it's not just a matter of family to family. If you have 2 family members living in the house in the ADU, it's probably not going to make a difference, but you can't legislate that. Once you approve the ADU is available for future rentals. It's available for all kinds of additional kinds of development. And that, again, is the change in the character that we're concerned about. So that would be my comment. I've lived through lots of change. I've been here a few years. I've been in the corporate world for a long time where things are very, very much different than when I started out in the 70s. So I understand the principle.
Okay, I just wanted to alert you to that. And I
No,
appreciate that.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Charlie, I have a
Go right
question. As a former officer on the HOA, has your homeowners association enforced covenants in the past? Have you civilly enforced anything? Has there been a problem?
To my knowledge, we have not had the civilly enforced through the courts, but the HOA has taken steps. So, for example, someone was looking at buying one of the pieces of property, and the first thing they wanted to do is fence it in and bring cattle in, which is against the covenants in that residential area. The HOA stepped forward and basically said, you know, we're not going to tell you that's okay, and we will take that as far as it needs to go should you decide to do that. There have been numerous other times when it's been a discussion between the property owner and the HOA. And in fact, one of the more interesting ones was where there was a fence built in an easement area that the HOA and in the road area, both that the HOA worked with the homeowner under some duress to make sure that was moved. So there are many examples where the HOA has stepped forward and said, you know, this isn't in.
So it is an active HOA?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And
thank you.
again, I think you better ask the HOA and
Sure.
not me. That's my observation.
Additional questions for Henry? I have one. You indicated that you didn't know about this until recently. Are you outside of the range of notice for this particular?
No, the notice came to me on Wednesday through certified mail.
Okay.
And so then I had to scramble. I guess I brought the notice home Wednesday night. I read it. I got in touch with Cody on Thursday, but I couldn't really get in touch with him until late afternoon. And because you're closed on Friday, there was a limited opportunity for us to pose any questions. So he and I had a brief conversation where I asked some general things, but that was all we were really able to do. So the period of notice wasn't, you know, particularly long for us to have any discussion on this.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't accept anything from the audience. Thank you. But I did have a question. Cody, is that within the standard?
So Cody Sack, environmental planner. I don't know how long it takes for mail to go, but they are date stamped October 13th, which is the day that they needed to be sent out. So they were date stamped at the post office on the correct date.
Well, that's as close as you can cut it. And with you guys closing on Friday, we might want to be looking at something. That's
So-
cutting it close.
Yeah, so the applicant took pictures and emailed me. Just
But
so we'd have
when
them
you
on
say
that
the
Friday.
13th and we're supposed to be out 10 days, you're including the date of mailing.
Yeah, so they're informed. They get those letters before that day.
Right.
When they choose to send it out, if they choose to wait till the last minute and send it out, that's the
But
applicant's
most
choice.
people don't usually count the date. There'd be 9 days, not 10 days, the way I do business. The date that you mail it doesn't count. Got 10 days from that, so the 24th would be the date.
So I believe state statute says that they have to be post dated 10 days prior to the meeting date.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Business-wise, with us closed on Fridays, that can create certainly concern with the neighbors.
Mhm.
We should be looking into that. I don't know what the rest of the commission, that's really getting her down pretty tight, folks.
And I don't
Okay,
think.
thank you, Henry. I would be irritated about that too, Henry.
Well, I'm not irritated, I'm just
I'm
concerned,
just saying.
but, and I think.
Unpleasantly surprised.
The packet wasn't really available until Thursday afternoon
Right.
either, which provided limited time to pose any questions prior to this discussion, so.
That part's normal and within procedure, but the other is a
understand.
requirement, and so
Yeah.
I'll go with unpleasantly surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. All right, I have another speaker request from Stephen, is it Hoyer? Please introduce yourself just for the record, Stephen, and go on from there.
My wife is the president of the association, so she maybe should have spoke before I do, but I'm not going to take a lot of your time. We've had these covenants for almost 50 years. We've had our bylaws for 30 years. The people who are putting on the property knows what they say. And they've totally chosen to go under the table to get this thing done. In fact, the house is pretty much almost built already, and we're just having this hearing now to determine whether or not we're going to go ahead with this thing. It's almost too late. We have our rules and bylaws just the same as the commission does. and we respect those, we comply with them. And my only question to you people is, or request is that you please honor ours and respect ours. I would have loved it if this commission had a copy of our association rules and regulations before awarding this house to be built. It's our number one thing, is there no more than one house per lot. And the minute you buy this, you're association killers. You're killing us. So I would ask you to deny this for those reasons. And my wife can, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Steve. I have one more, Sharon Nelson, before we get to.
Hi, I'm Sharon Nelson. I live at 13040 Box Elder Drive, which is kind of kitty corner from this lot. And I have lived there for 35 years, but I would like to argue those first three up there because I think that it does ruin the enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for the purpose that it's already being permitted. And I believe number three, especially, it says it should not impede the normal and ordinary development and improvement of the surrounding properties and uses in this area. And I think it does. When you had the picture up there of the building that he's building, trust me, I can see it from my house. What you're not seeing is that this is only a I forget how many acre lot, and there's already 5 buildings over there, and this is the 6th. And it's just, there's just so much stuff on this property already. Plus, I'm a past president of this association, and we did almost go to court on the fence issue. He did finally back down after he got a letter from a lawyer. But we have been able to negotiate this and with the homeowners because our association is very active, and it has been. And we have always been able to resolve the additional pets and the fence in the wrong place. And those barbed wire fences in the past, because they have cooperated with their neighbors. In this case, it was never even brought up. They just poured the foundation, started building the building, and nobody even had a chance to go over and talk to them. But I do know that there's a couple other neighbors that did talk to him previous to at somewhere in the process of this, and told him that the permit was required and that he should not be building this against the permit and that sort of thing. But he went ahead anyway, and I guess at this point, we're just really frustrated because even if you rule in our favor and say that he has to take it down, I don't know who has the authority to tell him to take it down, and so we would be stuck with that problem too because he's already built it. It isn't like we're working with this and we can still negotiate, and he hasn't invested a whole bunch. But all of us who have lived there for 30-some years have invested a lot of money in our property. All of the property in the area is in the 3 to 4 acre thing. It's not like we have a whole bunch of room to build and make a whole big development. We're 11 miles out of town. And anyway, I would hope that you would say no to this permit too and turn it down because if we have rental units and we have second homes on these 3 acre lots, it's going to be like living in the city, and we all moved out there to not live in the city. So that's kind of my stand on this. Thank you.
Questions for Sharon?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I'm
Mike.
going to go back to the first gentleman that I talked to on this. I'm not sure that as a commission, we have the right to say no on this, but your homeowners association does.
It does, but I guess I'm
Why doesn't it get active and do something legally on this rather than have us do it?
Well, and that's what we're asking you. What can we do? I mean, we get a lawyer in there. Yeah, what do we do? Sue him?
Sure you do.
Okay, sue him to take it down.
That's how it works.
Well, I guess issuing the permit in the first place, I want to know who put the nose on that. I would like, like him to answer that.
Cody.
Who checked those 3 no's?
Cody Stacker, environmental planner. I did. For number 1, will it endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare? It's a residential neighborhood. I'm not sure how adding another residential structure in the neighborhood would endanger it. Same with number 2. If it's a residential neighborhood and a residential use, I don't know how another residential use in the same residential neighborhood would impair someone else from developing their property. And number 3, most of the properties in the area are developed, and again, residential use, residential neighborhood, residential zoning. It's not like we're putting an auto body shop in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So that's my reasoning for those no's.
Okay, I would respond to that and say it's residential, single dwelling property. It's zoned as a residential single dwelling.
And with a conditional use permit, they could put another one on there. If your covenants say that you can't have a second residence, as I talked to the president of the HOA, it is between you or the HOA and the landowner to handle it civilly, because we cannot enforce your covenants.
But the requested use should not substantially impair or diminish the values or enjoyment of the property in the neighborhood.
I guess I would question on how a residential use in a residential neighborhood diminishes the values and uses in that same neighborhood.
I would say a second building on a 3-acre lot diminishes the enjoyment and value of everyone's property around it. That's just my answer to that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sharon?
Just one question. You made a comment about 6 other buildings on the.
There are
property.
several, 5, I think I said 5. And
Are
there's
they
a
sheds or are they?
Yeah, yes, one's a welding shop, there's 2 storage shops, he mentioned them before, 2 of which do not have permits, but there's like 5 total already, and this would be the 6th. Thank you.
Thanks, Skip.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a question for Cody.
Go right ahead.
So Cody, if this was, as the residents say, already started to be built and so forth, and there's other buildings on this property, there are going to be fines, double the fines for the permits and so forth. He's going to have to get up to compliance, am I correct?
Correct, yes.
And so it's just so the residents know that this has brought attention to it. So if there are other buildings on that property that were not had permits for, they would all have to be updated and double the fine.
And those are in the conditions of approval. I think they're towards the end of it.
Okay.
I have a question for Cody. Has the applicant applied for a building permit yet, or are they waiting for the decision on this?
No, so we wouldn't allow a building permit for this until the CUP was done, because of what they're proposing.
And once the building permit is applied for, how long does that process take?
If they have everything septic, if they don't have to update their septic, so from the time they submit a building permit, 7 days.
How long?
It's about 7 to 10 days.
Is that all? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping you were going to say 7 to 10 weeks, but.
Well, there is a 30-day appeal period between the decision of the planning commission and when that actually goes into effect. So on that 30th day, they can apply for their building permit, but they wouldn't be able to apply for anything. For the ADU specifically, for the other 2 building permits, they can come in and get those into compliance at any time.
And so what's the process for the appeal? Does that go to the commissioners?
No, it goes to circuit court.
Circuit court, okay.
Cody,
Thank you.
was there any indication as to the rest of the story on, is it a family member they're building it for? Is it a rental that they're building it for?
So I believe it's for them, from my understanding. The member who lives in the single-family residence is a heavy smoker, and they wanted to move out into that residence. According to them, the covenants prohibit them from renting anything out, so they wouldn't be able to rent anything out based off of their covenants, from my understanding. I haven't seen their covenants, but that's what they told me. So,
But the landowner could, if they wanted to do, as long as it's 28 days or more.
for an ADU, yes, under our zoning ordinance, correct.
Yeah.
Good. In the packet, under building permits, you have 5 structures in building permits. So were they all permitted structures, all 5 of those?
No, so 2 of those structures were not permitted. 3 of them were built in 1987 prior to the issuance, or prior to the requirement of a building permit. So the loafing shed and the tool shed that were built in the late 20 teens would require a building permit now.
Have you requested the building permits from that homeowner?
So the homeowners received a copy of this. They haven't spoken to me about it yet. But we wouldn't take in a building permit for this ADU until their building permits are finalized for those other 2 structures.
Yeah, I'm looking at a progressive record here of building stuff without a building permit and then not being proactive in coming in and getting building permits
Yeah.
for things that have already been constructed.
So I will say those 2 other structures that were built with the requirement of a building permit were built by a previous landowner. I believe it's one of the parents of one of the applicants, but they didn't take over the property until last year. So they weren't responsible for those permits 5 years ago.
Could I make
Excuse
a
me,
response?
excuse me.
Could-
Is it in relation to
Yes.
to a direct reply to something?
Yes, to what you
Okay,
just
because
said.
we've still got a Mrs. Hoyer
Okay.
I've got pending without it. I don't have a speaker request form from you, but I know you're on the docket, so
I
go
just
ahead.
want-
And
You
I
have to
wasn't
enter-
quite finished with my discussion
I
with
just
Cody,
wanted-
please.
Excuse me.
I wanted to clear
You
up
have
the
to
relation-
reintroduce yourself just for the record. Go ahead and speak.
Can I do that?
Go ahead.
Okay, Sharon Nelson, I'm back. I just wanted to clarify, the house is for his dad, and his dad did own the original house, and he sold to his son like a year ago, and now this house that they're building is for his dad.
Thank you, miss. Any other questions for Cody? Well, we got him up here.
You got one more speaker request?
Yeah, no, I noted it when Mr. Hoyer was speaking that he indicated what his wife was going to.
I did have another question for Cody. So, because these 2 accessory dwelling or accessory units were built without a permit by a previous owner, are you saying they're grandfathered from the new owner, or is he still required to get a permit on those?
No, he's still required to get a permit. I was more speaking when you were speaking to like a tendency of them not getting permits, that was done prior to them owning the property. So I was just clarifying that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Cody.
You know, I think this is a good experience for me because it's seeing the residents here talking about the ADU units. You know, this has been big discussion in the last couple of years, not only with the city, but with the county, because of the affordability of housing and so forth. I think the city's the one that started out with ADUs on smaller units. And the whole purpose or intent, I believe, behind some of that was affordability for living with a parent living in one and kids living in another, because quite frankly, the cost of living is getting so expensive. 2 are going to have to live together in order to make one. We're having the same discussion on, you know, this one's a little bit different. It says it could be long-term. They put a long-term rental in there. Some people are talking about short-term vacation rentals, living in one and renting out the other. Quite a few people do that now, not only in Rapid City, but in the surrounding areas, to be able to live and afford still living in their homes. You know, duplexes, live in the top, rent out the bottom, whether it's long-term, short-term, it helps make the payments for people to afford their home. I understand you guys, the situation, you bought into a neighborhood 15, 20 years ago and expected to be 3 acres or as it is. But as Jim has said, things are changing. In order to keep up with, to be able to hold on to your parent, it sounds, and thanks Sharon for sharing what you know about this, because that sounds like exactly what the ADU is supposed to be doing. A parent's going to be living in one while the son lives in the other, and being able to still live on the property. You know, that's the whole idea of it. So I although we can't enforce your covenants, And that's what those are for, is for you to go that route. But I just want to have you guys understand that things are changing, and to be able to be a property owner in this area, this is part of it, taking care of family, and quite frankly, when you get to that point, hopefully, you can help your family out in that way. But I understand where you guys are coming from. I didn't expect this, but I do understand that the intent of this ordinance of ADUs was for that purpose, and it sounds like it's being used for that. But you do have your covenants, and as the commission says, that's an avenue you could take.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess I'm going to weigh in on this thing a little bit too. I've never been a supporter of the ADU because I think in planning, you are absolutely correct. Things change. Well, they can change the other way in a hurry. Now we're talking about two dwellings that can go out for rent in an area that they're not looking for rent. And down the road, that sets that precedent that then the one next door goes, and the next door, and the next door. We're setting these precedents, and by the same fact, we have an ordinance that says if you're a caretaker, when the caretaker's done, you got to take it off the property. Sounds like total conflict to me. So that's why, and Brittany probably smiled when I brought up, I've never been a great supporter of the ADU thing. It not only hurts covenants, it sets these things up that we're supposed to be planners. And then how do you plan for the future when everybody can rent these things out? That the main house could go up for rent too. You could have two different groups, and these folks don't know who their neighbors are. And the problems with rental as well as there's areas that don't have problems with rental. Go ahead, Cody.
So the main, Cody Sacker, rental planner. The main residence has to be owner occupied.
Excuse me?
The main residence has to be owner occupied. Like it has to be owner occupied under.
For the ADU, but down the road it could get rented too. That's what I'm saying. Change. Down the road, we're walking into this same thing.
If it's owner occupied, I don't believe that it'd be able to be rented. The main residence has to be owner occupied. So you wouldn't be able to rent the main residence out and the ADU out. The owner occupied.
Number 11 says that the principal dwelling on the property be owner occupied or utilized as a long-term rental. What does that tell you?
That I'm mistaken.
We had some change already, Cody. This is the point. That's why I jumped on that. But we could change the rules down the road really easily. Go ahead.
So sorry, Brittany corrected me. So that the property can be owner occupied, but the people would have to then live in the ADU, and then they could rent out the main dwelling. You wouldn't be able to rent out both. You can only rent out one, and it has to be long term.
For now.
And what's
At
the enforcement
today's
leg?
rules.
Yeah, what's the enforcement?
What's the enforcement leg of that? I mean, what's to stop them? There's nobody double checking it, right? So if they decide to rent both of them out, it's only by complaint basis.
No, so conditional use permits, like they have review periods. So the only time they're put on a complaint basis is if the planning commission allows it to be on a complaint basis. You can put a review every year, every 2 years, and then that's checked. Before this meeting, I checked to make sure that the property was owner occupied. So it does get checked, but it'd be up to the planning commission if it ever gets put on a complaint basis only.
Okay, thank you.
Cody, I would have to say, I do worry down the road that here, I've got 3 years left, or I'm on my third year of commission. As soon as I get off, we change that rule, and there we are, planning. We're not, some of these things have to be long-term, and I'm not sure if we're requiring caretakers' residence be removed, what are we doing putting ADUs on properties? That's why I don't see the balance here, but that's just as a commissioner. I'm going to support what the ordinance says they have an opportunity to request the conditional use permit. I'm just saying I'm not sure about the wisdom of the planning.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Charlie, I appreciate your thought process on this. I look at as I'm getting close to my retirement, and I think many others, when you have a piece of property and you can do an ADU, you've lived in one for several years, one that's 2,300 square feet, and it's two people or one people. As you get older, you downsize. Why couldn't, and you don't know what the market's going to do and what's going to happen. I look at how, when we talk about to our citizens, how can we stay in our own places? If you had an ADU you can move into for 400 square feet, that's all you need at that age. Rent out your property and be able to keep the property kept and pay the taxes and stay in. That's one way to look at it. There's other ways to look at it too, but when we look at affordability, that's why they clarified you could be main residence or ADU, because there was some discussions in the past where it only be the ADU. Well, as families downsize, what do you need that big property for? You can get into a smaller one and rent out and upkeep the property. It's a plus. But you're absolutely right. There's two sides to how things are going, and changes are happening, and I respect your comments.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
We do still have one
I'll
speaker.
wait until the end of the speaker
All right,
request.
thank you. Yes, ma'am. Would you please come up and introduce yourself for the record, although I already kind of entered your name into the...
My name is Jeannie Hoyer, and I'm actually the president of our association. This is only my first term of doing it, so I got a few months left. But I wanted to, first of all, I wanted to say that the whole point to me of this is that they've gone against our covenants. The person who's requesting this is the son of the father who's lived here all these years, whether he was here before we had association. I mean, a lot of people they just changed it in 94, to have an association. But the point being is that it states on the very front page of our association covenant that it's residential use only, and it shall be used for a single family. Now, when you acquire a property in our association, in our residential area, you can build a small place to live in, like a garage, say, and you can live in that until you build your house, which they usually just say, 3 months. But if it takes longer, that's fine. Then when you're done and you're living in your residence, then you have a nice garage with whatever you had in it when you're building your house. And it's not considered a single family dwelling anymore. It's still there. You don't have to tear it down. You reuse it. Your family comes, they can stay overnight, whatever. But you're not getting a separate address, for goodness sakes. I was just, this whole thing has got me spinning my head. I didn't even know about it. Unfortunately, I had an accident and I couldn't walk down that part of the road anymore. So I hadn't seen what they were doing. Okay, I heard about it from people that lived on there. And I didn't know if it was just another building he was putting up. And then when I walked down there and I saw that conditional use permit, that usually is you get the permit before you dig a hole, I would think. So then I never got a notice on it. That very same day that I saw that sign, Sharon got a hand-delivered notice. None of the rest of the association was informed of it. So we had no way to even question it. I didn't know if it was true or not. I mean, nobody contacted us. We didn't have anything to physically think. Personally, I don't want to confront the person on their property and ask what the heck's going on. This is against our association. If you want to change the rules, there's a way you can do that. You have to have a certain amount, like 75% or whatever it is, a majority to change rules in here, which you're okay to do. If you don't agree with the single family thing and you want to build another, but here's another thing too, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling. why didn't they just attach this house to the existing house? Like they were enlarging it. I know it's because they didn't want to raise a baby there with a smoker, because it would permeate, and I understand that. But if you want to get around the rules of your association, then you need to be a little smarter. Because I think this is a defiance of what they're doing to us. They're putting us in a position that we have to either get an attorney or picket, and protest or whatever. But we don't want to be an association like that. We've lived this way for a long time, and yes, I do agree in paying Mr. Jim Coleman, but you do it the right way. You go through the channels. You can't just say, well, today I'm going to build another building because I want my family to live there and they're close and I could just, have it all, I don't think it needs to go that way. It needs to go this way. That's why these were made. Everybody has rules in their family and in their neighborhood. Can't put your garbage out until garbage day. That sort of thing. This is easy. Read it and live by it. We all have. Everybody has. We've only had 2 situations since I've been on the board, and they were easily taken care of because people spoke up and they said something, or they did it by this. They came to the board and they asked what we could do. And it was taken care of. But this is going behind everybody's back in that association and just doing it. And then saying, I dare you to come say something. Because it's done. That building's done. And where was the permit people there? Why weren't they saying, well, wait a minute. How can, you haven't even got permission to do this yet. Why are you building your building? I heard you can dig ditches and get all that kind of stuff, the foundation. But when you start building it up, so where's that penalty?
Jeannie,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I've got to correct you. That's exactly what we're doing here. We do now have a situation where we backed up. They're applying for the conditional use permit. They do not have a building permit yet. So that has not changed.
Okay.
That's what we're doing here today.
Okay.
And that's what this commission is deciding today. So, questions for Jeannie?
You're asking us to do the dirty work.
I'm asking you to agree with me? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I can't
Say
hear.
You're asking us to do the dirty work.
No.
Now, wait a minute.
Okay.
Where, if you look at your covenants, you say single only. Single
hear you.
residence only, right?
I'm sorry.
Single family,
Beg your pardon?
single family.
Yeah. On the front page, you're only supposed to have 1 residence per lot.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you get an attorney and take care of it? Why should we have to do the dirty work on that?
Well, when we did this, we filed a copy. We had to come to the commissioner, correct? Pardon me? No. I didn't understand what she said.
You may have filed a copy with the Register of Deeds, but it wouldn't have come to the Planning Commission.
Well, I understand that you guys can't do all this stuff. I do understand that. But when somebody came and put the sign up, they can't. Did you come put the sign up, Cody? Out front?
So Cody Sacramento Planner, that sign is put up by the applicants.
By the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you're right. We could get an attorney. Why can't we do a cease and desist? Why can't you do that? Why can't you stop until this thing gets straightened out?
That's not the way that we've got it set up at this point. I mean, there are rules, and they will pay a penalty.
Mike, I got to weigh in here again.
Yes.
Jeannie, I don't mean to push the issue, but that's what we're doing right now. You said, why can't we stop this? We have stopped it.
Okay.
If they continue to build, we'll take other actions, but we are in the process. They have the right to apply for a conditional use permit through the county,
Right.
irregardless of your covenants. And the reason we don't enforce covenants, it's a simple answer. It's a civil matter.
Yeah.
It's a lot more simple than we think. It may or may not be right in our heads,
Right.
but I'm telling you, that's what it is, and that's what the courts decide. And the courts will read, if you do decide to pursue your civil matter, they will read your covenants and they will listen to the applicants. We don't listen, we don't get in court decisions.
And I agree. I would like to see people live in a nicer house than bunch them all up in one building, but they could have just added on to it too, and that probably wouldn't have been a problem.
I'm just gonna continue to ask for questions for Jeannie so that we don't go over material we already discussed, Jeannie,
Okay.
which you're unhappy about, and I think we sense that, so, thank you.
Is that it?
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it, all of you.
Cody, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I just, Cody Second from Arnold Planner, I'd just like to clarify some things. Even if you lived in a garage and had a living quarters in it, that would be considered an ADU and it would still get its own address. Also, if you add on to the residence what they're proposing, you'd become a multifamily dwelling. And again, I believe their covenants say only single-family dwelling, so that still wouldn't fix what I think's going on here.
In the case of the father, would it be multifamily?
It still would be, if you add the whole residence in there, like a whole new kitchen and everything, separate
all right, I
entrance and
understand what
everything,
you're
it's a multifamily dwelling.
I was just meaning if you added on for him to stay there
Mm-hmm.
without adding the kitchen and what.
They could if you didn't add the kitchen in there, they could, but then it would just be an addition on the house. But what they're proposing has a full residence.
Just wanted to clarify. Okay. Any other questions for Cody while we got him up here?
Yeah, Cody, how far apart are the two properties or the two residents?
I'm not sure.
I mean, are they?
Brittany and Dwayne, our ordinance enforcement officer, went out for my site visit last week. I wasn't able to go.
I couldn't
Like
tell
20?
from the overhead picture either, Kevin,
Like
where it's
20
gonna
feet,
go.
like 100 feet, like, or somebody, you can't see from the aerial. I mean, is there a site plan? Which doesn't have a lot of bearing. And my other part of the question is, would they do, where it addresses address, like A and B? You see some of that in town here where you've got a duplex, it's 410A and 410B. It seems kind of odd to me that we even have to do two addresses.
So anytime that there's living quarters, 911
It has a
wants,
separate, yeah.
because if someone has a heart attack in one and you say it's this address and they go to the main residence, then they're not responding to the proper place. So that comes from 911.
They also don't do the half addresses anymore because of the problems with 911 emergency services.
When we went out there, we drove up, and it's like right in here, right behind it. Right in here somewhere.
Behind the house.
Yeah, so within, easily within 100 feet, closer than that, probably.
I'm guessing it's fairly close because like I said, they want to hook it to the same septic system as that's on the house.
Okay, other questions for Cody while we got him here? Thanks, Cody. Anyone else would like to speak on this from the audience? Thank you. Chair will address the motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation for conditional use permit CU 23-24.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve per staff's recommendation CU 23-34 with 16 conditions. Floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
these always give me heartache. I wish there was a way that we could respect the covenants through our, before it ever gets to our body, through the planning commission, or through the planning and zoning office, if there was a covenant and it's not meeting those requirements, to be able to check that box and say, no, it's not meeting the covenants, we won't approve it. we don't have that now, and the rules are set up for a vast amount of area, so I understand why that's not there. And I also understand our role in supporting those rules and the landowner rights that this person has, aside from any covenants. Is they bought a piece of property, they want to develop their property, and I believe that people have the right to do what they want to do with their land. They chose to purchase a piece of property that is associated with covenant, so they should be abiding by that, and they should be aware that that was there prior. So I do see a history of them doing something and then asking for forgiveness, or can I get away with it? And that doesn't sit well with me either. But I am going to support this measure because it's, as a county, we don't have a whole lot of legal ramifications or justification to not approve this conditional use permit. I would really highly recommend that the association proceed with legal to follow up and enforce your covenants. The more you do that, the less likely anybody in that neighborhood is going to do anything outside of the rules. But as this body, we can't enforce your covenant. So I will be supporting this conditional use permit.
Anyone else? I guess I've got some heartburn with it. One, we are dealing with a building permit violation here. We went ahead and jumped in there. We're also dealing with what I call, if we met the legal law on notice, we certainly didn't do the heartfelt content of what the purpose of notice is to neighbors, even to the covenants people. They sat there as neighbors. They think, we're building another shed. We're going to make 6 or 7 or whatever it is. And then they get notice at the last minute and they're here and we're closing a day out of that week. Things have changed, as Mr. Coleman put it. So I have problems with those two things. We haven't, the real heartfelt content of what we're doing here, they have covenants in place. Number two, we don't have people come to us in advance of these things happening. We have them come to us after they're happening and when they see it go through. And I think we've got to start reacting to that. I don't think by starting the building in advance, and number two, holding this right down to the wire as far as notice. No, I don't think the intent of what our rules and the citizens of the county want us to perform. So that's where I'm coming from.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Charlie, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, absolutely, I give these guys credit for getting a notice in a short time and making it down here to make your point, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I would be a little upset myself too if I didn't get a day or even 2 days before the weekend to be able to gather information on what's going on. So I do get that part. You know, at the beginning of this, I would have been more, when that was brought up, I would have been more open to continue this for 2 weeks so that notice is out there. And I don't know if that'd make much of a difference for the residents or not, but that is an option that they could request.
Well, what I'm saying is, if 80% of the property owners come in here, we have allowable, not to consider covenants, but we have an allowable right as a commission to consider the neighborhood content and the neighborhood opinion.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'd rather see it continue and let's see what happens. I don't feel any obligation because of those two things to do a quick handling of this.
Well, on that, with that note, I'd rather err to be safe and continue it for 2 weeks than to give people the ample notice than not.
As a substitute motion?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
I think.
Moved and seconded.
Okay. Now I'll finish.
Now you can finish your discussion. Thank you.
I think that's appropriate. I'm not gonna say things will change. You've heard what this commission says. Absolutely covenants are a civil part. I've got them in my development. Like you said, if you guys want things changed, you get 75% for that. And I know that's a pain because lawyer fees, then everybody's got to divvy up money for the lawyers and so forth. But if that shows how much you believe. The reason why the county doesn't do that is for that reason. We're enforcing stuff that somebody else wants and the cost would bankrupt the civilians, the constituents. So you can definitely have them changed if that's what you want in the enforcement. I know that's not what eases the pain of all this, but that we all have the same problems in some of our developments. People painted their house a different color. Are we going to go spend $10,000 on a lawyer to get them to paint it the right color? No. So it's just how important you want to keep that part. So, but that's my final comments.
Thank you, Lee.
I have a
Go
comment.
right ahead, Carol.
This buys you 2 weeks to maybe talk to an attorney. So that would be my suggestion.
As well as I was going to say, when I commented about, when I see a vast majority of a neighborhood, you can't come in here and tell me you talked to the neighbors and they all agree with you. I need something that says by signature that they support that you oppose it or something. You have to come up to, you're certainly allowed to speak, but you have to reintroduce yourself just for the record, Jeannie, and go from there.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Hoyer again, back. I just wanted to say too, there was everybody, like you just said, everybody we talked to, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of retirees that can't even get out of their home. So would it be appropriate for you guys if I went
Have to
around?
email Cody.
Excuse me?
They can email Cody,
Cody.
and he includes it in the records to us as a commission.
Okay, then I'll
He's
do
very
that.
good about that.
Yeah, I'll do that then.
Go ahead, Cody.
Cody Stack, Remember the Blender, they can mail it too. Doesn't have to be email. So.
Excuse me?
It doesn't have, they can mail it too. It doesn't have to be email. So if some people don't have access to email, they can mail in a letter too.
I'm not versed in all this.
Thank you, Gene. All right. Any other discussion on the substitute motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think we'd also give the applicant, I mean, they're not here. If this is something they want, they should be able to stand before us and tell us why they did it, and why the reasoning is behind it, not through third party. So that just goes to show the applicant's not here.
Any other comments on the substitute motion?
I would just say, Mr. Chair, that I believe they have the authority to do it, but with the history of not getting the building permit and the other things, a 2-week continuance is not a issue at all. I think that'll pass 100%.
I'm comfortable with the continuance myself.
All right. Hearing no additional discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have to have the date in that. I did not read the date when it said substitute motion. The date, Jason, what's our next meeting? There has to be a date in it.
November 13th.
What is it, November 15th?
13th. November
13th?
13th.
We should revote because there has to be a date in it for a continuance.
Got it.
Will that be your motion then? All right,
Um,
will the second agree with that?
Yep.
All right, it's moved and seconded that we have this continued to the November 13th, is that correct?
Yes.
Meeting of the Planning Commission. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for letting me get that corrected. On to the next item, number 10, I believe.
Morning again, Commissioners. Jason Thendison, Assistant Planning Director. Agenda item number 10 is rezone 23-14 to rezone from Agriculture District to Rural Residential District. The applicant is Adam Masters. Property location is approximately 1 mile west of the intersection of Highway 385 and Broad Gulch Road. It is 4.02, currently vacant. Access will be provided via future driveway off of Rochford Road, and the flood hazard is currently unstudied on that property. So when basing their recommendation, staff does take into account the zoning designation comparison, which is on the screen. Also look at current zoning within a half mile. You can see that on the screen as well. And lastly, future land use within 1/2 mile as well. Staff also does look at roads and streets. The applicant owns the abutting lot to the north, which is in Lawrence County, identified on the map on the screen in white. They're proposing a private driveway across that lot via Rochford Road to access the subject property. Infrastructure will be private, on-site wastewater as well as water. Request was sent out for interdepartmental review. There were no objections or concerns received. The Forest Service did mention that they will not allow any access off of Forest Service lands, which is fine because that lines up with what the applicants are proposing. Staff's analysis of the request is that the applicants do not have agricultural plans for the lot and prefer the zoning to be residential for future development. They do plan to put another single-family residence or a single-family residence on that property. Future land use is identified as rural residential district. Staff finds no significant issues with the request as it appears to be in harmony with current and future land uses in the area. And with that, staff recommends approval of rezone 23-14.
Questions for Jason?
I have one, and I may have missed it. How much land do they own in Lawrence County, that Northway?
So it's an undescribed portion, and I didn't have access to the record for that property up there. I think it's about 10 acres, though, based on discussions that I had with the applicant.
Yep, okay.
Any other questions for Jason? I've got one. Where does in your drawing here, where does the Lawrence County line become involved there?
So if you look at the screen, it's right here.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, where it separates the white from any of the color.
Good, that's where I thought it was at.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jason? Anyone here in the audience to speak on this? Chair would address a motion.
Don't move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve per staff's recommendation, rezone 23-14. Discussions from the audience. From the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 11.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we do item 11 and 11-12 together, but vote on them separately.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to discuss items number 11 and number 12 together as similar proposals, each noting that it will take a 2/3 vote to pass that, and we must vote on each agenda item on an individual basis. Having that understood, any discussion from the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You may discuss number 11 and agenda item number 11 and number 12 together.
Okay. Agenda item number 11 is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 23-10 to change a future land use from agriculture district to suburban residential district. And agenda item number 12 is the rezone to change the current land use from agriculture district to suburban residential district. The applicants are Tanner and Shanna Lofen. Location of the property is located near the intersection of County Road and Cortez Lane. It is 1.27 acres, currently vacant. Access is off Cortez Lane, and there's no special flood hazard area on the property. Again, staff does take a look at the current zoning designation comparison, which is on the screen, comparing agriculture to suburban residential district. Again, we also look at current zoning within 1/2 mile of the property. See several parcels are identified as suburban residential in brown, and future land use within 1/2 mile as well. infrastructure and private on-site wastewater is what's being proposed, as well as private water. Cortez Lane is a 66-foot wide platted right-of-way. However, it is only 18 feet of gravel. If the commission recalls, these two adjacent lots up here in this area were recently underwent the same request as this. And it did go to the Board of Commissioners. Both were approved to go to Suburban Residential District. And that's because the city of Box Elder platted these lots, made a note that the property owner should come and do the rezone and comprehensive plan amendments. That never went through. It was discovered during a building permit application that these lots did need to get rezoned and the comprehensive plan amended. With that, staff recommends denial of comprehensive plan amendment 23-10 and rezone 2315 as roads and infrastructure do not support further suburban residential development.
Questions for Jason? I've got a couple of the other commissioners are still looking. One would be, what's the blue? You threw me a curve there. What's that blue?
Blue?
Outline?
Oh, that's the subject property. Sorry. Typically that's orange. Sometimes it shows up differently in Rapid Map. So this is the subject property in the middle here that's identified in blue.
Okay. And may I ask, can you, with your arrow, note it says October 17, 2023, the Board of Commissioners did a little bit. Can you show me which of those so that I know what I'm dealing with?
So, yep. The first one, I believe, was this lot here, and the most recent is this lot here, 6A and 6B of Cortez.
Two side-by-sides.
Right.
Heading over in the same direction to our designated property.
Right. So all three of these lots were created at the same time through Box Elder.
I see.
So this is more or less housekeeping for these folks so they are able to build on these lots, because currently this lot that we're talking about today is an illegal lot, so I could not issue a building permit on it.
And then the last one would be the city of Box Elder then awaits our action on these before they allow the people to
Right, and we've
go
had
any
that
farther.
discussion with their planning department, and we are routed on any of their potential subdivisions.
This isn't like the one we reviewed here ways back where the cart got in front of the horse.
This is probably the same.
Kind of.
Is it under the same one?
It
Okay.
was just like what we had last,
Go ahead.
at the last meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
So unfortunately, I'll be opposing staff's recommendation and supporting turning this into a real lot.
Any other questions for Jason? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I don't have any more questions, but I can remember the discussions at the commission meeting and making them required to go to the 24 feet in the infrastructure when you've got 12 lots already, one's an end. They kind of seen it as, Jason had said, a cleanup. We got to try to clean this up. I'm just giving you a little bit of information from the commission meeting, what happened with it.
Anyone else?
To me, what happened in the past and what the commissioners did here more or less says to us that we need to approve this, not the denial part, but as far as go forward with it. It doesn't make any sense to me to leave that little land all by itself and the others a go. I just don't understand that.
I guess to follow up to an older one, some of the members feel that we should support what ordinances are in place until they're changed. So I think that's what we're doing here, isn't it, Jason? You've got a planning department that supports what ordinances are in place, and those ordinances say the road wasn't developed.
Right, and that's where staff's recommendation came from, to deny, based on the current ordinance.
Then to go on, the planning commission is supposed to provide expanded thinking? Is that to resolve these matters that come up in question when ordinance doesn't exactly meet reality? Would that be a way to put it? So Chair would address the motion. We can only address a motion on one item at a time.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we actually approve CA 23-10.
I second that.
It's been moved to approve CA 23-10. Discussion.
The rationale is just to, again, bring this up to speed like the rest of them that we've done.
Okay. Any other comments?
My typical stance on the other two has been to support staff and deny this. I'm voting to move to approve it this time. I don't see where our denial's going to do anything. They're going to go to the commission and get approved, as the other two did. It also cleans up, like Kevin stated, and it should be the last of these three on this street. We heard no neighborhood complaints, any of those other items in any of these three lots that have been before us, so I'll support that motion.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1. Now we're on item number 12.
Mr. Chair, move to approve rezone RZ 23-15.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve RZ 23-15. Discussion. Hearing none, from the audience. From the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1. On to item number 13.
All right, agenda item number 13 is Planned Unit Development Overlay PU 23-06 to allow recreational resort. This was continued indefinitely by the Planning Commission at the last meeting. That was because it didn't look like there was really any end in sight for the applicant to get things taken care of. However, that same day of the Planning Commission meeting, we did get approval from the state for the proposed septic systems. They gave the state gave preliminary approval. The applicant also submitted floodplain development permits for the work that he's going to be doing with those drain fields. So at the last week's board meeting, I did recommend that we have that heard again by the Planning Commission for final approval. So if you'll bear with me, I'll just run through this one more time for you guys from the top. The applicant is Horse Creek LLC. Garrett Kuchenbecker is the agent. Location of the property is 23570 Highway 385. Lot size is 18.07 acres, currently zoned commercial district. Existing land use is a recreational resort. Access is off Highway 385, and there is special flood hazard area on the property. Staff's analysis of the request is that the applicant is requesting PUD overlay to expand the use of a legal non-conforming recreational resort on the subject property by adding 15 additional recreational vehicle parking spaces. During staff's review, the request, it was determined that the following legal non-conforming uses required further attention, and that was the existing on-site wastewater treatment system, as well as several park models that were located within the special flood hazard area boundaries. The applicant has since anchored those and received floodplain development permits for them, and also submitted elevation certificates for each one of those park models. And then lastly was the on-site wastewater treatment system issues, which the applicant has handled through another floodplain development permit, as well as the preliminary state approval allowing that to be in the floodplain. So with that, staff would recommend approval of Planned Unit Development Overlay 23-06 with conditions.
Any questions for Jason? I have a comment, and I'm familiar with this particular property from a long time ago on the commission. They should be complimented for the persistence they've gone through to clean up a bunch of old issues with this property, and I can't compliment them enough from my previous history on this property and the concerns that planning people had on it. I hope that really goes forward nicely in the future, the way it's cleaned up.
Yeah, the applicant had stated that it was a pretty eye-opening experience for him. He didn't realize what he was getting into. So, yeah, he's come a long way.
I'm sure Commissioner LaCroix is aware of the old issues on this, and this is amazing. This took a good applicant, believe me. Any other comments for Jason or questions? Hearing none, the chair would address a motion.
I move we approve PU 23-06.
Second.
Been moved and seconded
With
to
conditions.
approve, yep. PU 23-06 with 24 conditions. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to the next item.
Agenda item 14 is preliminary plan 23-17 to create Lot 5R and Lot 6, 7, 8, 9, and Reservoir Lot 1 of Block 4 of the Ranch of Black Gap. The applicant is Jeff Loggy, Dakota Land and Cattle Company LLC. Other affected landowner is Signature Water Company. Their surveyor is Long Branch Civil Engineering. Location of the property is at the corner of Black Gap Road and Ambush Road. It is 51.85 acres, currently zoned planned unit development. Access is off of Ambush Ranch Road, and there is no special flood hazard area on the property. So you can see here, this is the subject property that we're talking about on the screen. Coming down here, this may be a little bit difficult to read, and I apologize for not highlighting the property lines as proposed. But these are the proposed lots that they're laying out. So we got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the reservoir lot here. Request was sent out for interdepartmental review. There were some comments that came back from DOT stating that there will be no access off South Dakota Highway 79. Also, community development from Rapid City stated that there is a staff report, and this request going through the city is 22 PL 138. This is within the city's 3-mile plating jurisdiction, so there are also concurrently running plat through the city as well. Staff doesn't really find any major concerns with this plat, so we do recommend approval of preliminary plan 23-17 with conditions.
Before I open the questions, a member of the commission has noted that they are going to abstain from the voting, but I did comment to the member that we are different from the Board of Commissioners. We do allow our people to involve themselves in discussion on a matter.
I live right down the street, and I'm on the road district board, so, but I do have questions.
And that's why, if you'll note, our bylaws are different than the commissioner's bylaws in that we are allowed, Karen doesn't need to go down and become a member of the audience to discuss this. So go ahead, Karen.
I have a question about.
He is the abstaining member, excuse me.
I'm abstaining, but I want to ask questions. The access, will that be coming off Vantage Point? Or will each, it looks like the plat has each lot backing up to Ambush Ranch Road.
Right. Yep. I don't think we've gotten any building permits at this point, so
Nothing.
it does look like proposed access is off of Ambush Ranch,
Okay.
at least for those lots. And it looks like these are easements that go up to access the reservoir lot up to the top.
Yeah, and there was a question that the Highway Department had about Vantage Point being only partially finished. It's only a gravel road at this point in time.
Right.
Any other questions for Jason on this?
The application for the county shows 59.274 acres. The size on the staff report is 51.85.
And that may have been something that the surveyor found when they went out.
I was
Actually,
just curious.
when they-
I wasn't sure what was
Yeah, when
what.
they actually did the survey, that's not completely uncommon for those to be a little different.
Where's the 59 acre reference, Mike? On the
Preliminary application form on the right side of it.
Did I miss that? I see.
Oh, yeah, 59.
Could that include the acreages of the accesses?
So there are actually, I think, 2 properties involved in this. Isn't this portion here as well being included? Yep, so there are should be two different tax IDs. Apologize for not having this one highlighted. It is included in this proposal as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And you're going to note where the other ones are at for us with your arrow?
Yep, this property here should be
Okay.
highlighted on this map. So you can see it is included here as part of this proposed reservoir lot.
All right. Any questions with Jason on that? That's a good point, Mike.
Yeah.
Good catch. So our line size would be changed to 59, just for the record, 59.274. Want to understand what I'm talking about in our staff report preliminary? I have changed that. Any other questions for Jason? Anyone here in the audience to speak on this? Ma'am? Discussion? Chair will accept the motion.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve per staff's recommendation. Preliminary plat 23-17 with 8 conditions. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We're on to item number 15.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. Item number 15 is ordinance amendment OA 23-12 to amend Section 313 access easements of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. The reason for this change is to clarify this section to reflect how easements are currently interpreted and how we're putting them on plats, and how the notes on the plat are being added, because we added the certificates on the plats. So this was pretty much a complete overhaul of that section. So I guess I would entertain any specific questions.
The biggest change I
Commissioner.
saw was that you actually want the easements on for utilities and these sort of things being shown on that when it's submitted to you.
Correct.
Am I correct? That you need to be able to see these things that time rather than listing them in conditions and catching them down the road.
Correct. So if those are available, just like you saw on the previous plat, there were significant ones that addressed book and page numbers. And that's how we typically require them. That's how our subdivision regulations do. So this is just to clean up like how we actually interpret and how we utilize easements.
Okay. Questions for Brittany? Discussion? Chair would accept the motion.
Move to approve ordinance amendment OA 23-12.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance amendment OA 23-12 per staff's recommendation. Only discussion I would have is basically being presented as a cleanup matter, and it appears to do that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 16.
Item number 16 is the County Board Report. The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendations from the October 10th, 2023 Planning Commission. However, Ordinance Amendment 23-01 to amend Section 319 Vacation Home Rental was continued to the November 7th, 2023 Board meeting.
Thank you.
You want an update?
Yes, that's where I was. Can I ask,
Are you
also,
sure?
do you feel that I should be there since it sat through all these? I was going to ask, I've been watching this when it comes up, whether I should be there in case you guys want to pound on somebody.
No, I think there were some good questions, and then at one point, there were some changes they wanted to be made, and quite frankly, I don't know where some of that come from, except for, I guess, some what I heard, if you watched it, they thought too much regulation, one comment. If I remember right, Brittany, some of the fire stuff was removed from the ordinance. Fire requirement for open fires and
I think there was clarification. It just stated like
Clarification.
per the South Dakota wildland fire requirements, things like
Yeah.
that.
I think the biggest changes that I seen from the first go-around was the insurance part, as you guys talked about. So I think you guys know about that. Second part was housing dwelling, one thing we just dealt with today. It said main residence had to be, owner occupied, but the ADU could be utilized as a vacational rental. Well, that was changed to where it could be just swapped. Do you know what I'm saying? The end part where the discussion, I think we agreed with the fines, if I remember right. But I can tell you when it comes forward again, there's probably going to be more discussion on the 3-year, $1,000.
Review.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are some of the discussions that are going on. And I don't want, and another discussion that was said is there was some commission comments that said, you guys did an awesome job. You did all this work on it. And all of a sudden we're coming here and it comes to us and which happens, folks. You know that as well as I do. My personal thoughts on it is, I like the parking requirements. I like the idea of registering. It's a registered mark that when on Airbnb, that person's registered. I like that. Because those are two of my main big ones is parking. We don't want off-street parking and we want to require that. Where it's going to go at the next meeting is anybody's guess. I like it the way it sits right now. There may be other options that people want to change and so forth. My feeling on this is from my little bit of research that I've done is I think the vacation rentals has peaked and government's too late. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying anything bad about anybody. I think when it started out, you had investors coming in, and I remember one of the comments that I made at the meeting is I looked at a property out in Spearfish that was a vacational home rental, and I asked for the numbers, and they'd lost money for 3 years in a row. Then all of a sudden I got into my reports from the company that does, and I'm open. I've got one that I purchased to be home to at a later date, but you got to make so much. That person. Let me explain that. The reason why they lost money is because number one, they were an out-of-state company. They had to pay management fee, $12,000 a year. They have to pay cleaning, they have to pay maintenance, they have to pay upkeep. So we look down through their deals, absolutely, it's not a moneymaker. So the big comments that you're hearing, these are big money makers anymore. Well, there's so many of them now. In order to get your place rented to make money, you got to lower your price. Supply and demand. So that's why, that was one of the conversations that you bring up is they're only rented 120 days out of the year. So if your prices are going down and you're living out of town, taxes have gone up. Pretty soon you're going to see people selling their stuff. That's one of the things that I presented, but I feel like I'm trying to prove my point, but so that's where we're at on the discussion.
Do you foresee, Commissioner, that there will be some flexibility in addressing improved enforcement? That seemed to be an issue for those that even oppose having a revised ordinance. It's across the board that people kind of felt we've got to improve our enforcement. And those same people, whether they support the ordinance revision or not, all commented very positively about the number you brought out, the certification number, that there is a number now that has to be on their advertising. Do you see some flexibility in the improved?
From the discussion, and Brittany and Jason are here, I think everybody, the discussions on trying to get them in compliance was a consensus. I mean, we wanted to make sure that the fine was high enough that, you know, if I remember, it was the double the fine, it was gonna end up being like $3,000 fine if they didn't register altogether, because they'd have to do, double the fine for all the application plus, the 3-year certification thing. I don't know where if the 3-year certification is gonna survive. I don't know. I'm just saying that at the last go-around, it stayed in there and it was part of the fine. They do want compliance. But where,
Your certification was a stickler with those people that individually operate their own and don't use contacts. That was a concern
Yeah.
to a number of them.
I can say certification's probably not that big of a deal, but the $1,000 every 3 years probably could be a stickler.
Okay.
Just from my standpoint, sitting back, I could probably see that being brought back up again. So,
Thanks for your report. I appreciate it. I'm sure every member appreciates it. We spent a lot of time, a lot of questions, and we didn't lose any hair, I don't think, over it. I can't afford to lose too much, but
I'll say that you guys, I think you guys did an awesome job doing all the work on it, and I think we had, 2 or 3 in the audience, so, I mean, you guys
Been nice.
did a good job of addressing it, because we didn't have a lot of people come forward on it, but.
I'm proud of the membership of the board. We allowed some very, what would you say, a wide spectrum of opinion on that during our discussions, and that's good for the county.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice job, guys.
Any more on that, the ordinance, or I guess it's county board report? Items from the public. All right. Items from the staff. Items from the membership. 2 weeks in a row, I haven't got anything, so you guys are lucky. Well, then Chair would address a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to adjourn the Planning Commission meeting, October 23rd, 2023. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.